Hey guys, welcome to your tutorial on your West Coast Salish piece that we will be revising due to the circumstances. So in your little kit that you would have picked up last week, there would have been a block of clay, there would have been a black fine tip marker, and there would have been this fun little tool that would have been sitting in there. Those are the three things that you're basically going to be needing for this particular assignment, along with your design. Other things that you may want to collect and kind of prepare an area. Clay is cleaner than that blue foam that we originally were going to be using, however, it still is not clean. So considering you are doing this in the home, grabbing a garbage bag, placing it down onto whatever surface you're planning on working on to keep your area clean, and then just making sure that you yourself have some sort of a smock. You're going to want a small cup of water, although you will not be using a whole lot. An old tea towel or just some paper towels that have been sort of soaked in water and then squeezed out so they're just slightly damp. You'll want a small Ziploc bag or a plastic bag, one to store your work in between sessions if you're not planning on letting it dry out, and two to store any leftover clay that may be remaining once you kind of derive your shape. Other things that can be used is just any kind of household appliances. If you've got toothpicks, if you've got tongue dispensers or popsicle sticks, small little knives can be used. Rulers, okay. I'm going to be using basically a top off of a Tupperware container as my shaper or my former. If you do want more sort of hardy tools, I did send the one with you, but there are others that you can pick up at Walmart or any other kind of craft store that may or may not be open at this point in time. Because you want to keep your mess to a minimal, make sure that you are, I guess, snacks, water, anything that you're planning on having nearby is with you, so you're not tracking this through the house. And you're probably going to want to have some sort of a skin cream or lotion that's available to you, because the longer you touch this clay, the more moisture is actually drawn out of your skin. So you want to kind of work the clay, but at the same time we want to keep it to a minimal, because the more we play with it, the drier the clay becomes, and also the drier the hands become. It's sort of just, they counteract each other. Okay, so we'll get started from here. Starting off with, you can open up your block. It's going to be stuck in this big old plastic container. You're going to find that it's kind of firm but still squishy. If you are planning on keeping it in this lovely square block, that's great. I can go take that ruler and say, you know what, I'm going to frame this off and I'm just going to make it square. And that's the shape that I'm going to go with. And then I would work my figure and draw it in my sketchbook to the size that I'm actually designing. For mine, I'm deciding that I'm going to be doing a round. And so I'm going to go ahead and manipulate this particular piece into a round that is at least ½ an inch thick, because we will be doing the bas relief form still, which is a low relief structure or sculpture. And so we need to be able to carve into the actual design. And so if we make it too thin, it doesn't really work in our favor. And if you make it thin and then try and add things on, I'm going to know, because the whole thing is going to fall apart when you start trying to manipulate and add pieces to a very thin base. Okay, and we'll kind of go through that in a bit here. First off, let's get our base kind of structured. If you are planning on changing things around, so it's just like Play-Doh, or if you've ever made bread, you might want to add some water just to make it a little bit more squishy. Okay, too much water and it's going to become what we call slip, and it becomes very squishy, which also then is a problem in the long run to form or create or sculpt, because it becomes too squishy and too messy, and it'll actually stick to your table, which you can see, if you're going to use the garbage bag, I would suggest a bigger bag that covers the entire table. So we'll take this, and I'm going to kind of speed through this and kind of get this planned for you. And there you have it. So now we've got this basic rough shape. You can see that I've placed my paper towel over top of my other clay if I plan on using it. It's not saying we can't add stuff later on, but the majority of this sculpture will be done through carving the excess out. We can clean up edges and basically smooth everything when it becomes a little bit more stiff. Right now it's still very soft because I added that water. Plus we're going to be manipulating it considerably in the next little while here. So for now I'm going to put this off to the side and we're going to kind of turn our focus over to our design itself. Okay. And again, this is going off over to the side. I can go ahead and if I've got enough paper towel, kind of just drape over top or place a plastic bag over top of it just to keep it moist so that the air itself doesn't dry it out. Okay, so we'll shift this off to the side for now. Okay, and I'm going to bring in my light table. You guys have these things called windows. Windows are great. Now I'm going to go ahead and attempt to do this in my crippled state. Again, this is where you're going to need that lovely fine and Sharpie marker because we're going to do basically a transfer of the design onto our clay. Now, easy way to do this, so I've gone ahead and I've chosen my design itself. Remember that anything that we plan on doing is going to be a reversal. So when we're dealing with a reversal, you want to flip it onto a window and then draw it from the opposite side. And that's where we're going to be placing our markers too. So again, this is going to take me a little bit of time, and so we're going to kind of speed through this. Remember, when you're drawing anything, work with your wrist. So especially with me and having limited motion, I'm going to be moving my particular design as needed to work with the limitations of my wrist. So let's go through this. Okay, so now we've got that basic reversal. Just give me a second to suit back up here. What we're going to do now is we're going to basically take this piece, and I'm going to just get a cake flipper and we're going to place it directly onto our clay mount. So let's switch this around. I'm going to bring this over and place my piece on. Okay, so now you can see I've basically got my structure sitting off onto a turntable that this is a cake maker. You can choose to do something like this if you've got it at home. If not, you know what, just shift your paper bag, because just like drawing, you're going to want to make sure that, hopefully this is done, so you can see most of my stuff has been stuck down and I can see the reminiscence of my particular design on the clay. I'm going to now start basically carving. I want to be able to move this, and so if you've got it on plastic, it's a little easier. If you've got it on the table, you can see what kind of a mess that it does make. So I do, again, work with what you're available in your home and that you're not making too much of a mess for everybody there. We'll go from there. So starting off with, again, you've got this lovely tool that I sent home with you. Same concept. We are now going to be taking a look at what is positive, what is negative. So for me, I'm looking at the bird itself is going to be my positive. The small designs on the inside are going to be my negative. So anything that's black on this particular design is going to stand up. Everything else is going to basically be my negative or sit down. Now, on the blue foam, we had kind of talked about taking the outsides out first. And in some regard, that's going to work. In other places, so like when I look at this beak area, there's a very small sort of line that runs right at the top, and then there's the white that's going to be cut through. If I remove this outside line and then try and do this inside, I'm probably going to distort my beak. And so I'm going to want to take a look at some of the inside designs initially, just so that I can get them into place while there's still supports on the exterior, and then build my way up. Now, there was different types of designs, so you've got your ovoids, you've got your trigons, you've got your crescent moons. Okay, with the trigons, we'll start with one of them so you can kind of see how that works. If you're using your tool, you've got your little sharp edge. What I'd like you to do is, in the center of where you would imagine a triangle, you're going to more or less make a hole. And it's kind of hard to see from the distance that the camera's at, but there's just basically, I'm making a pinhole that's right in the center there. From there, I'm going to draw a line out to each of my corners, signifying where the corners of my particular triangle is kind of going to go. The idea is just like an inverted pyramid is the way we want it to kind of look. And so we're going to branch off and say these are where my corners are going to be. Now, if you have a knife, it may be easier. Otherwise, you can use the sharper edge of this. You're more or less now going to carve out each section as if it was a flat mound to give you a bit more of a sort of a flat, angular piece that's going to come out. Okay, and you'll slowly pick it away. Again, if you have even just a little paring knife, sometimes these are easier because there is more of a sharp edge and they are a little bit bigger. There we go. Now again, your designs may be different. They may have smaller pieces, they may have bigger pieces. Try and keep your edges as smooth as possible so that you can not have to fight with them later. Okay, so there's one edge there. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the difficult one that is basically curved. And you can see how, because I don't have my outsides done, it's supporting that edge. Clay is very therapeutic, so hopefully you find this relaxing and not too stressing. Again, if we end up making mistakes, we just work with them. Okay, so there's my second edge. You can see where the hole is now that deep crevice, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish off that crescent portion. Listen to my own words and start working with the way my wrist moves. And then I can pull that out. Now, when we're carving in, because it is a bas relief, okay, it's a low relief sculpture, you want to make sure that you're not going anywhere deeper than halfway through your design. If you're going all the way to the bottom, we got some problems. So it's just sort of being aware of how thick your design is and what you're actually carving out. Okay. So now that I've got that first section in, I've gone ahead and used the knife to carve it. I can still take my tool and more or less shape or clean it. We want it to be a nice smooth edge. We don't want little reminiscence of the clay kind of sitting around. And you can leave it until the end and do it all at once. And when it hardens a little bit, it'll be a bit easier to clean little fine spots. But the more you can get out at the initial stages when it's still wet and you can kind of smooth things in, the better. Okay. Again, using your tools the best of your ability. And there's no right or wrong. If you have something in the household that you can think of outside of the box that you think is going to be a better tool than what I've sent, by all means, use it, provided that you get permission first. I don't want to hear about how you stole all the bakingware for your clay project and then didn't clean it properly, and now it can't be used for making cupcakes, okay? But most kitchen appliances, like your rolling pins and the rest, will work very well for this. All right. So there's my first little chunk. We're going to continue on with this, and so now that I've got that first section, if I want to come around and start working on this outer piece, I can. Again, being very, very careful that I'm not overstepping and creating a weakness that will alter my design. But this is where, again, if you have a knife or wire works really well, you can see how it cuts quite clean and smooth. And I can start to see the form of my particular design coming into play. Okay, cut less, or cut it not as deep as you think, and you can add more or cut more. It's easier to cut away than it is to add it later on, just because to add it, we're going to have to add water, notch, clean, and we'll kind of talk about that later. I'm hoping that nobody has gotten to that point yet. Okay, so I will leave you with this, and I will continue to work on this, and we will come back in a couple of days for another video where I've basically gotten the majority of mine carved out, and then we can talk about problem solving if and when there's anything that needs to be added, as well as where we go once this is completed. Now remember, if you are working on this for an hour and then you go, you know what, I'm tired, I'm going to step away and go do some math or some social, a couple things that need to be done. One, all these little pieces that you basically carved away need to be put into a plastic bag. At this point, I'm just going to put them underneath the wet paper towel that I have from previous. This entire design, my suggestion is the wet paper towel will work, but it may wash away your design a little bit. At very least, what you need to do is seal it into a plastic bag. So taking the whole thing, putting it into a garbage bag, putting it into a Ziploc bag, making sure there's no air into it, and just slowly putting it in some place that is dark and not overly dry, which in the wintertime I know is a feat in itself. Okay, if there's any kind of smoothing that needs to be done, or if you find that the clay is drying out, suggestion would just be put a little bit of water onto your fingers and add it at a very, very slow progressive rate. To dump too much water, or like I'll use a spray bottle occasionally, but to put too much too quickly, you're going to end up with basically mud. And it's not going to hold its shape, and you're going to find it very frustrating. Okay, so I will leave you with that. You guys can get started. If there's any questions, please email me or text me. I've sent you both information, and we will kind of move on and pay attention. In a couple days, I'll get the rest of this up on video, and we can go from there.